Good morning. We continue on with this series of On Purpose, and today our theme is Purpose is Present. Our scripture is the Gospel of Matthew, the 14th chapter, verses 13 through 21, and you will recognize this as the feeding of the 5,000. I'm reading from the Common English Bible. When Jesus heard about John, that being John the Baptist, he withdrew in a boat to a deserted place by himself. When the crowds learned this, they followed him on foot from the cities. When Jesus arrived and saw a large crowd, he had compassion for them and healed those who were sick. That evening his disciples came and said to him, "This is an isolated place and it's getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, "There's no need to send them away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing except 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish." He said, "Bring them here to me." He ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. He took the 5 loaves of bread and the 2 fish, looked up to heaven, blessed them, and broke the loaves apart, and gave them to his disciples. Then the disciples gave them to the crowd. Everyone ate until they were full, and they filled 12 baskets with leftovers. About 5,000 men, plus women and children, had eaten. Now, this passage begins where it says when Jesus heard about John. And what he heard about John was the death of John the Baptist. And he's seeking to withdraw from the crowds that had gathered around him in Galilee. And to fully understand this, you have to also understand the geopolitical scene in that day and time. Galilee was not a big area. And some of the research that I did said that there were over 200 towns, and each of these towns had a population of at least 15,000 people. So it's a very populated area, very difficult to get away from the hustle and bustle of the crowds. And so in hearing about the death of John, Jesus is seeking to withdraw someplace where he can be alone, be in prayer and meditation with God, to deal with his grief at his cousin's death. But the crowds were following him everywhere, and even though he got in a boat and was putting away from shore, heading for the other side of the lake, they were following along on the shore. And Jesus had compassion on them, so he had the boat put in, and he went among the crowd and healed those that were sick, dealing with their problems. In other words, he was spending himself for the people there. And as the day wore on, the disciples came to Jesus and said, "Look, we're out here in the middle of nowhere." To put it another way, there's no McDonald's here. So where are we going to get, where are the people going to eat? Send them back to town so that they will have some food available to them. And Jesus turns it right back around to them and says, "No, you give them something to eat." And they said, "We don't have anything. All we have are 5 loaves and fishes." And so Jesus said, "Bring them to me." And he offers a blessing. Now this blessing that Jesus offers, William Barclay offers up a Jewish blessing that was used before meals and suggests that this may be the blessing that Jesus uttered over these fish and loaves. And this Jewish grace before meals: "Blessed art thou, Jehovah our God, King of the universe, who bringest forth bread from the earth." Whether or not that's a blessing that Jesus uttered? I don't know, but it does serve to provide some focus as we try to sort that out. And so we have Jesus working or giving to the disciples, who in turn give to the people. And it's still that way today. Jesus gives to us so that we in turn can give to others. And there's one other significant fact in this scripture, and that's it, that there was no waste. That they took 12 baskets, they gathered up the what was left over and filled 12 baskets of food that would be used for others along the way. And borrowing from William Barclay again, he closes out his commentary on this passage, and he says, it does not matter how we understand this miracle. One thing is sure, when Christ is there, the weary find rest, and the hungry soul is fed. Now, I don't normally go into this area, but I think that in this particular series that we've reached a point where we need to provide some focus and some direction. And so as Pastor Don continues on with this series, I wanted to provide some material for you to contemplate as you prepare for the sermon on Sunday morning. The theme of this session is purpose is present. Well, another way of focusing that is that our purpose. What is our purpose in the grand scheme of things? And there are some questions that I wanted to offer up for you to spend time in contemplating as you prepare for our worship on Sunday. What are some of the differences between the way the disciples regarded and responded to the hungry people and the way Jesus did? Another question, how do the disciples' attitude and actions change over the course of this passage? What enables the change? And then, rereading verse 13, and then look what happens right after this passage in Matthew 14:22-23. Why do you think Jesus made a regular practice of taking time apart to pray by himself? In what ways might that have shaped his ministry? And finally, wanted to add this thought as you seek to discover your purpose and the grand scheme of things. To discover our purpose, we must focus not only on the future, but also on the present. What do we have to offer, and who needs it? When we offer what we have now, we find often, to our surprise, that is our purpose. That our purpose begins to come into focus so that we can understand, as we looked last week, who we are, and now what we're all about. What is it that God is calling and equipping? Don't forget that part. What is God calling and equipping us to do in the building of his kingdom here on earth? Well, I know that's a heavy question, and I hope that you will spend some time in reflection on that, particularly as you, if you don't have time before Sunday, as you look at the scriptures in the week after that, maybe take some time to ponder those questions. And again, what are the differences between the way the disciples regarded and responded to the hungry crowd and the way Jesus did? How did the disciples' attitude change over the course of the passage? And then rereading verse 13 and looking at what's going on in verses 22 through 23, looking at the question of why did you think Jesus made a regular practice of taking time apart to pray by himself, and in what ways might that have shaped his ministry, and in turn, what might a similar practice, how would it be at work in shaping our ministry? Well, may God's blessings be upon you, and look forward to you being there with our worship on Sunday morning.